There we go. All right, now we're streaming on YouTube. Yay! I think. There we go. All right, we're streaming on YouTube. Yippee-ki-yay. And I am maxing out everything. There we go. Oh, hold on. I need to mute this. Okay, I don't want to come through on any channels on the audio. Let me make sure I'm not coming through on Kick. Kick is good. So I've just got these additional channels open only because I want to keep an eye on chat. I need to find some sort of a plugin that will allow me to keep an eye on chat on multiple platforms. Okay, so sorry for the confusion. Again, we're streaming on Twitch, we're streaming on Kick, we're streaming on TikTok, we're streaming on YouTube, and on Discord, which reminds me, we need to bring up Discord. In the future, I will have this set up ahead of time. I just decided to do an impromptu stream this morning because I'm going to be working hard on stuff this weekend on my new collection, as well as continuing to promote the Halloween collection. It's a full-time job, folks. Anyway, okay, so one of the things that Phoenix 3D Printing and I have been discussing in messages is different types of joints. And one of the joints that I want to discuss today that we're going to be using, I am going to reveal that we will be creating a Christmas train or a holiday train, whatever your preference is. And in doing that, I want to make the wheels separate from the train. At least that's my initial thoughts. And then make it so we can print the wheels and then pop them onto the train. And I might even make the framework, the structure underneath the train cars. I might even make those separately as well. And again, the reason is because I want to simplify printing for everyone. So there's the least amount of chaos when it comes to trying to set up your printer properly and print things. I'm trying to minimize the amount of supports, and then at the same time, again, like I said, make this simple to print, and then also engineer the pieces so it comes together rather easily. And I think that'll also give us the ability to print things smaller as well. So if you don't want to do a full-scale large car train, you don't have to. So before we head down that road real quick, I want to remind everybody about our scarecrow. And I know some of you saw this as we were modeling it. So this is part of our harvest collection. And I'm pretty proud of it. It went really well. And I can tell you that because here is the final color printed. I need to get better lighting, I know. We're working on it. But here is the scarecrow, and then here is the final print. And again, for all of you on other channels that can't see my hands, there is the final print of our scarecrow. Isn't that nifty? So, very pleased with that. All right, let's go back to our base project. And we're gonna name this joint demonstration. I have dinner with my son and his girlfriend late afternoon, early evening, and as such, I don't have a whole lot of time to mess around here, unfortunately. But and next week's going to be kind of crazy too, because I'm going to be doing some traveling, and I've got some doctor's appointments and stuff at the beginning of the week. So yeah. All right, let's get rid of our base object here. And basically what we're going to do, and the type of joint that Phoenix and I have been discussing. Now, fair warning, I haven't set one of these up in Nomad yet. I've done them in Fusion 360. So this will be a little bit of a different experience for all of us. I'm going to go ahead and increase the topology. And what that's going to do, if I turn on my wireframe, you'll see before it looked like this. Now it looks like this. And what that does is that gives us a much finer edge along the top here, and it removes the tessellation that'll occur. I'm going to turn off grid because we don't need it. It turns off the, okay, why? There we go. For some reason I lost control. It increases the smoothness of our geometry on the sides too, so when we validate this, it becomes a nice smooth surface. And we don't have to go and smooth it and do all the other stuff that we would normally have to do. Alright, so you can control, I have the radius turned on for our cylinder. We're in edit mode right now. If I switch to the gizmo, then this just generally allows us to move it. But I can adjust the profile, I can adjust the diameter, the height. I grab the center one, I can scale it from the center. I grab the end points, I can scale it from the end. So in the case of a wheel, you're going to need to have obviously a place for your hub to come through. So let's call this the axle of the wheel. All right. And in fact, to make this easier to follow along, let's go ahead and make a wheel over top of this. I'm going to turn on our grid. We will lock the grid. Turn on snap, and I've got lathe. So what I'm going to do with lathe is I'm going to, I'm not going to use the curve, I'm going to use the path. I am going to set up a lathed object. I'm just going to go ahead and hit the button to execute the spin here. The cool thing is as long as I don't validate and I stay in edit mode, I can go ahead and tweak this shape as much as I want. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a tire. Now if you want to turn snap on, hold on, lock it. If you want to turn snap on and get a little closer so you've got more grid divisions, you can do that. And then that'll allow us to start giving this a tire profile. Again, you can see the edge is kind of rough here, and if I turn on wireframe, you'll see that's because we have very minimal divisions in our topography. So I'm going to go in here, and hey Wicked, welcome. I didn't see you join. I'm going to up the division, and you'll see that curve start to improve on the edge of our wheel. Turn on wireframe off, and let's lock it again. So again, we don't need to get too complicated here, but I do want to give this, you know, a bit of a wheel look, like it's got a tire on it. So you can see there we're starting to get kind of a tire look. Again, we need more geography here because it's geometry, and we need more geography. We need to go to more places. If you want to play around with the topology in, maybe you don't want as many divisions around the perimeter, so we can unlink these and then just mess with the divisions of our topography vertically and horizontally, or around the z-axis. All right. Excuse me. Pupper Village Nomad Skull. Oh, you're forwarding it to someone. Gotcha. What software is this? Yes. Oh, I see what you're saying. You're answering the question for me. Thank you. Yes, Nomad Sculpt running on an iPad Pro. Okay. Let's continue our wheel. I'm going to lock this again and zoom in. Now, if you want a sharp edge, all you got to do is just hit that curve there and convert it to a sharp edge like that. Let's see, I don't need this one here. We'll bring this one down here. Now our wheel's a little deeper. All right, that's good enough to demonstrate the concept. Now another thing that I'm going to do, I've already done, is I've got caps on this. If I wanted this wheel to be hollow, then I could turn the caps off, and then we've got basically a one-dimensional, not one-dimensional, but a one-sided wheel that is hollow. So it's not now the downside of this is it's like a shell of the wheel. Now you can add thickness to this, and I forget where you do that. You know what? We're not going to worry about that today. We're gonna make a solid wheel. We'll get back to you on the setting the thickness of the profile. You can do a custom profile. What a lot of people do is they'll take this and continue inside and then double up the profile, but there's a simpler way to do that. I just don't remember what it is. Okay, so here's our axle. Let's go back to our axle. I'm going to bring this up through the wheel. I'm going to narrow this down just a little bit. That axle doesn't need to be that thick. Okay. Now I'm going to turn off X-ray. You can see everything. So our axle is nowhere near the center. Let's fix that. It helps to have things centered up. Snap is on. Let's see, where is the center? Right there's the center. Yeah, it looks like our cylinder was centered, but the wheel itself wasn't. All right, now it's centered. Okay, so this is great. You've got an axle and a wheel set up. If you're going to print this, the only way that you stand a chance of printing this cleanly is to flip this contraption upside down and print it with this face facing down the print bed. And that's great. You could do that. That would simplify things dramatically. But what if we have two wheels? And I'm going to turn the mirror on, and we're going to set the mirror to be on our y-axis. Okay. And then we'll grab the mirror and move it up here. So now I have two wheels on an axle. Again, the simplest solution is to separate this into parts. We could set this up to print, have it sit flat on the print bed, all right, which is, you know, I'm going to do real quick. I'm going to grab this whole contraption and move it up so it sits on my center line on the x-axis, or the x-axis there. All right, so imagine this is your print bed. If you print it in this orientation, then you've got to fill this area with supports. So again, you'll have a solid axle and wheel configuration, but you have the issue of supports. And again, supports are not a terrible thing, but the downside is they mar your surface depending on your settings. You can do good settings, but even with the best of settings, the surface is not going to be as clean as if it were printing flat on your print bed. Okay. The other thing is, too, underneath here, because this wheel has an indent, you're going to have to set supports in here. So in addition to it taking longer because you've added supports, and you've kind of complicated the print itself, you're also adding more filament, which is, in the long run, going to cost you. Now, if you're only printing one, it's no big deal. If you're printing 20 of these on a plate at once, then that starts to add up and increases your operating costs, again, from a store owner perspective. So the best thing that we can do for you is to make this wheel pop onto the end of this axle and stay there. So how are we going to do that? That's a good question. Anybody got any ideas? All right, I got a couple. Let's see if they work. All right, I'm going to grab this, and we're going to extend this out just a little bit. Again, keep in mind, this is my first time doing this, so we may need to do it a few times to get it to do exactly what we want. All right, so the first thing that I know is I got one of two options. Actually, the first option is I need to put something to stop this wheel from going down once it reaches the point where we want it to be on the axle. So let's go ahead and clone our axle and ask ourselves, okay, I don't know why this GVM thing keeps popping up. It's not, it's just in memory in the navigation. That's weird. I think we need to restart Nomad. Hopefully we didn't lose everything. If we did, we'll bring it back up. Yep, we lost everything. All right, Nomad was bugging out on me. Does it once in a while. Not a lot, but it does it once in a while. So let's go ahead and put our objects back into place. I'll talk less this time and actually just do what we need to have done. Let's grab our lathe. Now this is your center line for your lathe. So if you want it to be right on the center of your object, line your object up on the lathe. I'm going to use the path. And then we'll execute it. Now we'll tune it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and increase the topology right out of the gate. Now here's the cool thing. What we could do, instead of drilling a hole in this thing, is just go ahead and pull the center back right about there. And that should give us a center. Except when we cap it, it automatically fills the center in. My bad. Alright, so the way that we can fix that is we can extend this down here. I'm going to go ahead and set the opacity of this thing here down a little bit so we can see through it. There's my axle coming through. Why is it only trash Apple devices? Hey, Earl, thanks for asking and besmirching my choice of products. That's okay. I won't hold it against you. The good news is this is available on Android as well. So head on out to whatever app store you have there. I think it's Google Play. And download it for your Android. Happy to help. All right, so we've got our wheel. I'm going to turn off X-ray. And we'll crank up our opacity once again so you can see. So now we've got a separate axle. And this needs to have a double cap on it. And I didn't bring that down far enough, did I? No, I did. All right, tell you what, here's what we're going to do. We're going to close this loop. And now what that does is that makes a hole all the way through. I forgot about closing the loop. And that's on me, not you. You guys are just observing. I can't hold you responsible for any of this. Like whether or not Nomad is available on separate platforms. Because it is. Surprise! Happy birthday, or whatever holiday it is that you're celebrating. All right, I'm going to turn down the opacity again. Again, I should have shown you beforehand. As you can see now, we have a hole in our wheel. So that part has been handled. Now what we need is we need a cap. I'm sorry, a stopper on this part of the axle. So again, we're going to try and clone this baby. Boom, there we go. We're good. I'm going to increase... I'm going to turn off snap because we don't need to snap. I'm going to increase the diameter of that just a smidge. And when I say a smidge, it needs to be bigger than the hole in my wheel, because this is what's going to stop it from sliding on too far. And then we will scale it down to fit just behind the wheel on our axle. Now, spoiler alert, if you want, you could just go ahead and make it the entire width of the axle. You're going to add more print material to it, but the difference is when you print this axle, and I'm going to recommend that you flip it on its side and print it, then you're going to have a whole bunch of supports in here. And out here as well. Okay, so on either side of the cylinder. If we take the initiative and make this cylinder, the inside of the cylinder, as long as the axle, then the only place we'll need supports is here. All right, so that's what I would do. In fact, that's what I'm going to do. And you can't make me do anything any different. All right, so we've got a little bit of gap. Remember, tolerances and clearances are your best friend when it comes to creating this stuff, if you want it to work. Okay, and it's just a rule of thumb, just a general good practice to get into. Obviously, this wheel can slide up next to this, all the way up next to this, but just so there's no doubt in my mind that I've created tolerances, I like to make sure that there are tolerances to be had. All right, so we've got a gap between our axle and our wheel, and we've got a sleeve here on the back of our axle that prevents this wheel from going too far in. So let's look at everything in review, I'm going to up the opacity on this so it doesn't look like a ghost wheel. Although it is getting to be that season, isn't it? All right, so there's our wheel, there's our axle, and there's our stopper. Okay? And again, this and the axle will print as one piece when you export it. But if you're not confident of that, you can always merge the two pieces together into a single final piece. There's no right or wrong way to do that. Again, it's really up to you. Now, here comes the tricky part. We're going to need something to allow this wheel to slide over the axle, right? Thanks, Wicked, for helping out with that. Yes, Nomad Sculpt, and they are working on a desktop-based version for Mac PC and I think Unix. I'm not sure. They had a web browser-based version of this for a while, which I thought was kind of nifty. So I'm kind of hoping they bring that back too. But I guess if I have an iPad version and a Mac and PC version, what's the point? Except maybe a central repository for your files so everything stays in sync. But I can show you how to set that up automatically anyway, either with Google Drive or with the iCloud Drive on your Mac. Okay, so getting back to what I was saying. This here is going to need some sort of a construct to enable this wheel to slide down. I'm going to turn X-ray back on. To enable this wheel to slide down and then stay there. And the easiest way to do that, we're going to round this and we're going to put a little taper around here. Not a lot, just something that's slightly bigger than this. All right, you don't want it to be too big because if you do, then it won't go on. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on radius. And I thought I could do multiple. Guess not. All right, not going to worry about it. So I'm going to put a cone on top of this. I could do another lathe object, but let's use all of the tools that are available to us. Why don't we? All right, so let's bring this cone up. Definitely want to scale it down. And we're going to flatten it a bit. You keep it centered. In fact, on that note, let's check and make sure it's centered on the top, and it's not. The question is what is off center again? All right, so here is our wheel. That needs to go here. I'm gonna move this off to the side. That needs to be centered, and that needs to be centered, and then this needs to be centered. There we go. All right. All right, so again, go back to our side view. Let's lock it down. It doesn't need to have snap-on. All right, so again, let's bring this down a little bit into our wheel, and you can see right here that the edges are a bit too far out here. There's no way you're going to slide this wheel over these points. So the other thing that I want to do real quick is I'm going to give this cylinder some topology because we're going to mess with it a little bit here. You don't have the brains for this? Yes, you do, Eve. Maybe I'm making it too complicated. Melissa, we are creating a snap-on wheel in Nomad Sculpt to allow people that, like myself, one of the sculpts that we'll be doing is a holiday train. We want to print the axles, the train cars, and the wheels separately, and then you just snap it all together when you're done. Okay, it speeds up the printing process. You have a lot more control over the orientation of your layer lines and your prints, etc. Okay, so we've got our basic cone shape. It's a little big, but we're going to cut some of the edges off here. But what I want to do is I'm going to validate this so we can sculpt it and smooth it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and actually, you know what I think we might do instead? Let's go ahead and trim it. We had to validate it for that too. Let's go ahead and trim the edges off here just a little bit. So I'm going to use my line tool. Again, this is the inside of our wheel. So we want it to be just a little bit bigger than that. Not much. We have symmetry turned on, so it'll trim not only both sides. Actually, you know what I just realized? Doy. Let's undo that. We need to trim it from the top because it's a circle. All right, this cone, I'm actually going to decrease the opacity of our cone as well so we can see through it. Going back to our trim tool, we're now going to use a circle, and I'm going to constrain it to a circle, and we're going to pull it from the center. Alright, I think that's the inside of our wheel. So we're just going to make it a little bit bigger than that. Alright, and then we're going to flip it because we're going to trim the outside. And I just realized that our circle is not exactly centered. Why not? We came from the center. I'm going to turn symmetry off. Circle centered. Alright, that should be closer. Alright, there we go. Alright, again, we're going to flip our trim function. The reason we do that is because it's going to trim everything outside of our circle. We tap the shape. Comb. We tap the shape, and there you go. It trimmed it. Okay. All right. So now our cone, we want this to be on this side of the rim of our wheel. And right here, you remember, we did an indent on our wheel. So we want this to be just above the top surface of that indent. So again, just to review, here's the bottom keeper. I'm calling it a keeper. I want a little more clearance here, and the reason is because when we push this wheel down, we want to be able to push it a little bit past this cone. So that means this keeper has to allow just a little bit of up and down play. Okay, and then our cone again itself. Oops, I'm going to reset this trim because we don't need it. And then we'll move that up slightly to provide just a little more gap there. Now here's the cool thing. If you find that it's too much gap and yes, Phoenix, it is being recorded. We're doing all kinds of new stuff here, and recording is one of those things. So yes. The good news is because we're creating this in a non-destructive way. You can always come back and adjust these. Or what I like to do is I like to save versions of my scene. So I'm going to save this, and we're going to call it axle joint test. And then I'll save a backup. So the cool thing about doing or versioning is it's called version saving. So now if I go back, I've got the original axle joint up to this point, and then any changes I make going forward will save to the axle joint test 1. And then I'll save another version, and we'll have 3 layers or 3 levels of backups that we can go back to. Okay, so let's review. What have we got here? Well, turn the X-ray off so you can see everything, and we'll up the opacity of our objects again. All right, so we've got our wheel, we've got our outside keeper, and our inside keeper. So when this wheel gets on the axle, I'm going to go ahead and hide this wheel. You'll see it's going to live right in this little channel here that we're creating. Now, here's the problem. This wheel, I'm going to turn X-ray back on. When we go to put it on top of this cone, it's not going to like sliding over top of this. Nope, whoop. Sorry. It's not going to like sliding over top of this cone, no matter how low we set the tolerances. All right. So what we need to do is we need to make a way for this cone to give a little bit as we slide it down, as we slide the wheel over top of it. Now, one other thing I'm going to do, since we don't need this cone to have a point, I'm just going to go ahead and trim the top of it off. The top just needs to be smaller. Just needs to be smaller than the inner diameter of our wheel. So I'm going to trim off all of that excess. Plus, there's no reason for our cone to look like it, or our axle cap to look like it belongs on Mad Max. I'm going to up the geometry count, the polygon count a little bit here, so we can smooth it out. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a split in this, because what's going to happen is if we create a split in this cap, these sides under pressure will fold in gently enough to allow, hopefully, this axle or the wheel to slide down over top of our cap. Does that make sense? Now this is where testing comes in. Dumb question. Wouldn't using the cone like a hubcap, threading it on. Travis, yes, that would. And that is another option that you can do. Keep in mind that when we start printing, so Travis brings up a real good idea. What he's talking about doing is creating a thread system within the cap and on the axle. You slide the wheel on, you spin the hubcap on, boom, it holds it in place. Great idea. And if we were printing these things larger, then that would be a solution that we could use. The only problem with it is as these prints get smaller and smaller, threads are not always going to hold up really well unless we do a really big thread. And there are ways to do that. And quite frankly, I don't know that it would be simpler than what we're trying to accomplish here. Again, if you know how to use CAD, which I do, I know how to use Fusion 360, you can do that, and I've done that before. Not in this particular application, but creating threaded objects. I've created custom threads from corkscrews and spirals. And you can create spirals in here, but it is not easy to do. And when you get, again, when you start printing things that are small, you know, we're talking this scale here, there's a lot that has to be taken into account. What about pins to the cap? You know, another great idea, another great solution, putting a pin through the cap. And again, that's something that we can cover. But somebody that works with this is actually originating from a DM that I got about somebody that's trying to do a pop-on wheel. So that's why we're covering this method. But yeah, no, a pin through the cap, that's another option. Or like, you know, piece of filament. I've seen people drill holes through things like this, and then they just stick a piece of filament through there and trim it off on either side. So that's another thing that you can do, and it's fairly simple to do. Actually, it would probably be even simpler than this. But we're specifically doing this exercise for the person that was having the issues with the pop-on retainer, if you will. All right. So what I was saying before is, when you get to this point, now we're going to go ahead and trim all that's really left is to trim our slit down the center. And how far down we go really depends on, let me grab our gizmo here. Really depends on your settings. Another thing that we could do is we can do a version that has a single slit. We can also put a slit over here on this side. Okay, and then you'd have kind of a Phillips head looking, and of course we'd probably want to go ahead and line this up. Could you do a snap-on cone? Let's see, a snap-on cone. Yeah, we could do that too. Again, all of the things that you're suggesting, they're great ideas and definitely alternative ways to do it. And that would be actually good content for a video on, like, here's 5 ways to do this. And since you're asking, obviously this is something that we're going to look into. I'm going to look into doing in the future because there's definitely some interest here. But unfortunately, I don't have the time to cover all of the. I'm currently at 3 o'clock here my time in Chicago, and I've got about a half hour to 45 minutes left. So yes, great ideas and definitely worth pursuing. Definitely worth pursuing. I'm going to undo that last cut that I made because I see this one here went down a little lower. So I'm just going to bring this one down as low. Try to get it in the same neighborhood. So this is basically the concept. Now this is a little low here on our axle, so I'd probably go ahead and raise that up just a smidge. And actually I need to lower the axle. That's what we need to do. Oh, no, Travis. That is the engine that makes this stuff happen and makes it fun for everyone. Is it's definitely it's definitely a collaboration, a cooperation between brains, and sometimes mine doesn't always work correctly. So, all right, so let's just review real quick. Again, we've got our wheel, we've got our outer axle over top of the inner axle, and again, that inner axle at this point is really irrelevant. It's just serving as the recess where the wheel spins once it's popped onto your keeper. And then, of course, our axle or wheel keeper here out on the edge. Now, if you want, and again, I just went with a cone, basic primitive, rounded off or shaved off the top. If you want, you can smooth this. Let me turn symmetry back on and smooth out. Probably wouldn't smooth it too much there, just on the outside, so it doesn't look quite so harsh. And actually, if it's smoother here on these edges here, that'll facilitate an easier snap for the wheel to come down over. But as I was saying before, this is where it comes down to printer setup, what your tolerances are here in this thing when you built it. There's no guarantees, and you have to print and test this. So what I would do now, again, just real quick, based on app, Stone Dragon app is Nomad Sculpt, and we're running it on an iPad Pro, but it is available. Somebody came in here and started bashing Apple, and I'm like, come on, it's available for Android too. Back the truck up here, folks. No reason to get all angry, even though Apple is superior. Sorry. Hey, I've been using Apple products since 1984. Kid you not. All right. So I think I'm in my rights to say that. And ultimately, it comes down to what you like. Do you like using Android because of whatever reason? Then use Android. If you're an app or a Mac person, then use a Mac. It doesn't matter. If you invent your own computer and you can get it to work, then use that. But I won't bash anybody else's choices any more than than the next person. So don't bash mine, because I will call you out. I won't even call you out. Would you recommend 3D designing on an iPad or stick MacBook Pro? Because I want to make a decision. Marmar, good question. So I design on the iPad because it's quick and it's accessible no matter where I'm at. I can travel with this thing. I mean, I can travel with my MacBook, and I do. I just updated my MacBook to the M4 chip, and it's a very, very capable machine, but it's a bit, compared to a tablet, it's a bit cumbersome. Is there clearance on both sides so it can roll? Is there clearance? Yeah. We've got clearance on both sides. So, so it really depends on what you want. Now, I will tell you that that a MacBook Pro typically is going to have more power and more capability. Right now, Nomad is not available on the MacBook or the PC, either one, but word on the street is they are working on creating a version. It's actually in beta. It doesn't have all the tools. I've actually had in fact, you can check it out yourself if you want. Go to nomadsculpt.com/beta, and you can download a copy for yourself. I'm no one special. I don't think Nomad even knows I exist, and I'm okay with that. But yeah, anybody can get a copy of the beta. Now, I will tell you that there's only like 4 tools that work in it right now, but I definitely like the way that it's going. And honestly, I've used ZBrush, I've used Lightwave by NewTek, I've used Cinema 4D, Maya, all of the big guys. Had a professional career as a brand and marketing consultant, and we did a lot of graphic design for large companies. In fact, Caterpillar, I used Lightwave by NewTek to create a concept machine for their OEM division that was very cool, a lot of fun to work on. We used Lightwave by NewTek for that, and but I find that this application and working on an iPad is super easy. I mean, seriously, my wife and I can be upstairs. I'm in the shop right now, but we can be upstairs watching television or whatever, and she's watching for drama shows. I'm not too much into drama, so I just whip out my iPad and start sculpting, or whatever else, but definitely in the 3D side of things. So, yeah, I hope that's helpful. I know I didn't really commit one way or the other, so I would say iPad for ultimate transportability. Honestly, this is the highest end iPad available, and I did get the MacBook Pro with the M4 chip, and I'm going to tell you right now, the iPad was about 3K, and the laptop was about 4K. So there's not a whole lot of difference in price, but I also keep my gear and use it voraciously for 4 or 5 years before I even think of starting to update or upgrade. Can you import and export? Yes, you can. That's stuff that we'll cover in later videos. I will show you real quick, like now, for the axle. So basically, real quick before I show import and export, once we've reached this stage, now it comes down to putting this end on my other side of my axle. I'm not gonna bore you with that because that's just technical stuff. And then exporting everything to your slicer of choice. I use Bamboo Studio because I have Bamboo printers, and giving it a test. And testing is the most important thing because you're going to find out what you need to change in terms of your geometry. Does this need to be a little smaller? Do you need to make it smoother? Does it need to be more of a point? Does the wheel need a more severe? Where is my? I didn't. Hold on. Nope, I've got the wrong tool selected. All right. That never happens. All right, I turned on hide. Why is it not showing up? Let's just go back in time. There we go. I don't know what I hit. In some cases, I'm still learning this myself. But anyway, our axle. Oh, there it is. I was looking down the wrong axle axis. Maybe you'll find out if I turn on X-ray and then we lessen the opacity of this. Maybe you'll find out that your wheel doesn't slide on too easily. So what you can do is you can leave it the same maybe out here, because once you get it started, that might be all it takes to get the wheel started on the path to getting on the axle. So maybe what you need to do is you need to just change this curve just ever so slightly. Make it a little easier for that wheel. You don't want to go past. You want to go past your axle here, because then that's going to cause your wheel to slide too far on the axle. I can turn snap off, and now we can just move this a little more gradually. So you taper it like this, and it's going to help that. So it's going to help it slide on, long story short. And with that, the whole concept of what we're doing here is, it's kind of like, how can I describe it? How can I compare it? It's kind of like prototyping in a real-world situation. You're designing something, and you need, because you have a printer. I mean, 3D printers, they're not just for printing out dragons. Don't get me wrong. I got nothing against dragons and articulated stuff. But they were originally designed and created to be rapid prototyping machines. So based on that, that's exactly what you're doing. We're going to go ahead and, get our models all ready to go. I'll select everything and I head over to export. Okay, let's do that. Oh man, it's a little buggy today. I think I need to restart my iPad. I've been doing a lot with it. Everything I have selected, I'll export it as an object, and then I'll save it out here to my Nomad folder. And it'll be, wheel axle test. Now, one thing that you'll want to do is you'll want to save these as separate objects. So I'll select that, and then I'll export just the wheel. And then I would select, always name your objects too, by the way. It's just good practice. And then later when you come into your palette here, you won't be like, what the heck? So this was, we'll call this wheel race, because that's where the wheel sets. And then the cone is the wheel or we'll just call it hubcap. Call it wheel keeper, that's what it's doing, but it really is just a hubcap. And then there's our axle. Not axle like Axl Rose, axle like axle on a wheel. People who are buying are also artists. Just purchased app. We'll figure out. We're learning in the future. Yeah, Pupper, stop by here. There's links in my bio. I do have channels. I'm going to be doing more and more content. I do have a Discord. If you want to jump on our Discord, it's completely free. If you have questions, you can ask me there. You can message me directly, at least for now, until I start getting too many messages. Then I might appoint mods to help me out. Wicked, that's you. So again, we got our wheel, we got our axle, our hubcap, and our wheel race. So all three of these items I would export as their own object, right? And then the wheel itself, I would go ahead and export as its own object. So then the wheel prints flat on the bed, and then the axle itself would print, we'd flip it on its side. And that is going to be pretty much the principle of what I'm going to be planning to do to create our holiday train, which will be one of the exciting things that we'll be speed sculpting, because the end of the month is coming and I really got to get these things released sooner. By the way, our Harvest collection is officially up on My Mini Factory. There are 13, I think, 12 or 13 models that we uploaded this month, and I just finished them last night. And I've got at least that many that's going into our holiday collection. So, again, this will print like this. So the only supports that we'll have will be in here, and we'll have some in here. Minimal amount of supports. Okay, now the cool thing is you're like, well, yeah, but what about the axle? Because the axle's kind of round. And I'm like, yeah, you know what, you're right. So what I would do in that case, the axle's round, that's going to require supports. What I would do is I would make it less round by making it bigger, right? And then we're going to go ahead and validate it. We need to if we're going to do any kind of major operations here. I'm going to grab everything. I'm going to show it so we can move it off axis. Don't really have to, but I'm just going to for demonstration purposes. And we'll move this up here slightly like this. You know what? Actually, we don't have to move it at all. It doesn't. Yeah, sorry. By the way, rather than hiding and showing things, if you just hit the solo button, it'll show the object solo. And then when you turn it off, it'll show everything around it. So anyway, I'm looking down the axle now. I'm going to grab my trim tool, and I'm going to trim off a little bit of this axle. You know, we can have to constrain it to a square now. We're done with that. And I'm going to trim off the bottom a little bit. Oh, symmetry's on, so it'll trim off a little bit of the top too. So now the cool thing is actually, you know what, let me solo that again. I'm going to clean it up with a re-res or remesh. Okay, so now this is what our axle looks like. Okay, and if I turn off solo, you can see that it still breaches. Let me turn on X-ray so you can see it. It still breaches the edge of the wheel inner diameter, so it's going to keep the wheel. But the advantage is now this thing will print. This thing will print flat on the print bed, and you don't need any supports whatsoever on the axle portion. So once again, just with a minor mod here, we've gone ahead and reduced the amount of plastic that we're going to use in our printing of this, and by removing supports or the need for supports. So again, let me go ahead and solo, and I want this and this, and that now is how that'll print on the print bed. All right, I probably went a little too far in with my cut here, because this is going to go, the cap goes a little bit lower than the body, so I'll just thicken the body a little bit right here. There you go. So that's how it'll lay on the print bed now. Jess, what are you working in and what are we working on? Okay, well, we're working in Nomad Sculpt, which is an application running on an iPad Pro. It runs on Android as well. It's only $20 on the respective app stores. $19.99, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And as far as what we're working on, I got a DM from someone that was talking about doing axles where you could pop things on them, or joints, I should say, where you could pop things onto them. And I was demonstrating how to create a pop-on wheel on an axle in Nomad Sculpt. But I will be applying this to a Christmas locomotive / train in subsequent or follow-up live streams. Which, by the way, everyone, in the past I've had many recommendations from people that we should be creating. I should be recording live streams while I do them, and then posting clips, and then editing them and posting them up to YouTube. And I just discovered that YouTube actually, the algorithm prefers recorded videos rather than live streams. Live streams aren't bad, but we'll be doing more of that, which only adds my list of things to do. So, hopefully this was helpful to everyone. And I forget who it was that made the suggestion. I've got a little bit of time. I think it was Master Munoz. I'm not sure. Talked about an end cap that would allow you to put a hole through it. We're not going to do the threads because honestly, threads can be done, but it gets a lot of bit complicated. And again, much easier to execute in Fusion 360 or a CAD type of program. I'm not sure about Tinkercad. I haven't played around with that at all. I just went straight to the big guy because, again, I have a lot of experience in 3D, so I'm not afraid of getting in there and kicking the tires and pushing buttons and breaking things. But let's imagine for a second that we wanted to do a version of this axle where we just push a piece of filament through the end cap and trim the filament on either side, and that becomes kind of a holder to hold the end cap onto the axle. So let's do a version of that, shall we? All right, I'm going to leave this open. I'm going to turn that off. And let's turn on X-ray so I can see through. And we will hide that, and we're going to do another hubcap. Before we do that, I want to extend my race out a little bit because we're going to need room to drill a hole. And this is actually even easier. All right, I'm going to add another, let's see, do I want to do it? No, let's do a sphere. If I do a sphere, we just split the sphere in half and it becomes a cap. And it's already smooth and round all the way around. We'll just flatten it out a little bit. Actually, I'm going to go back here and drop the opacity so we can see through it. All right, so actually what I'm going to do is, sorry, I'm just thinking as I do this. Like I said, this is actually my first time doing this stuff. We're going to go ahead and validate it and then grab our trim tool because we want to trim the bottom off. So we're going to start with that. And probably right about there. So I only want half of that sphere. Now, we need to create a channel for the sphere to fit over top of the end of our axle. Okay. Actually, I'm going to bring it out here even further. Not too far though. So what I need to do is I need to create a channel or a cavity for this axle to slide into on the end cap. All right. So we're going to go ahead and go to our wheel race. We're going to clone it. And I'm going to call it wheel, let's see, hubcap Boolean. Okay. And now we will switch to our back view so we can see our profile. And we're going to increase the size of that a little bit. I'm going to turn the opacity down so we can see through it again. And we're going to extend the end out just a little bit. like that. Okay? Okay. And now we're just going to use that as a Boolean. So I'm going to hide it, and then we'll select the hubcap. Oh, that's the wrong one. That's our sphere. I didn't name it. All right. I'm going to up the opacity so you can see it. We're going to up the resolution because I want a nice clean. I didn't, shoot, that's on me. I didn't increase the topology. Let's go ahead and smooth it here with our smooth operation. Okay. And I'm going to we're going to hide everything else, the stuff that we don't need to see right now. So I just want to see, okay, the sphere, which is our hubcap. I'm going to call it hubcap. Call it pin hubcap because we're going to use a pin to hold it on. All right. So we've got our hubcap. We've got our wheel race, which is not what we want. And we've got our Boolean. Our Boolean is hidden because we've turned it off up here. We've selected it and we've hidden it. When you hide it, it cuts. When you show it, if you do a Boolean, it'll join. All right, and then I'm going to select the item that I want it to cut. All right, real quick like, we'll just hit the Boolean function here. And now you see we have a nice hole cut into our hubcap. I'm going to go ahead and up the resolution, remesh our hubcap so it'll smooth things out a bit for us. All right. Now we're going to show the hubcap and the wheel race. This hubcap here, I'm going to actually rename this so we don't get confused. This is our slotted hubcap. Okay, so we've got our wheel race and our hubcap that goes on top of that. And all that's left to do now, I'm going to go ahead and show this other stuff here too so we can see it. And we're going to drop the opacity so we can see through it. And basically what I want to do is I want to drill a hole through the hubcap itself and the wheel race inside. So the first thing I'll do is I'll go ahead and we'll add a cylinder. It's going to be kind of big, but that's okay. Oops, did I add a sphere? I did. That's on me. Let's add a cylinder. Where is it? There it is. Snap it. We're going to set it to snap to 90 degrees so we can turn it sideways easily and keep it constrained. Scale it down, move it up. All right, again, I'm just showing you the concept. There's no way to really measure sizes and whatnot in Nomad. So this is where you got to kind of guess, export, test, print, and if it's the right size, if everything is correct, then you're good. If not, you make your adjustments. We can put this right up to the end of the cap, give us a little more room for our pin. And if it is incorrect, then you come back to Nomad, you adjust, re-export, and test again. All right, so we've got our pin. Probably need to lengthen it. Yep, so I'm going to lengthen it from the center so it breaches the edge of our cap. And obviously it goes through our wheel race, or axle. I'm sorry, the end of the axle, which is the wheel race. All right, that's a little too far. Got to make sure that it's inside of our cap, because if it's too far, then when you slide the cap on, the holes won't line up. The best way to do that is just to zoom in so you have a good amount of control. Does Nomad crash less than Blender? Absolutely. That was the other one that I've used, Blender. And I hear that Blender is actually coming to the iPad, for those of you that didn't know. All right, let's increase our topology. Get a nice sharp edge out there. Yes, Nomad does not crash very often. I don't want to say it doesn't never crash, but it definitely doesn't crash very often. All right, I'm going to go ahead and use this now as our I'm going to copy it actually, so let's just go ahead and clone it, and I'll put it down here as a backup. Turn it off, go back here. We're going to hide it because that is our Boolean. In fact, we're going to need two of them. We're going to need to cut the cap and the end of the axle. So we're going to clone it again. We're just going to use two of them. So we got a pin selected. We'll select our cap, and then we'll go to Boolean. And there's our first hole. And then we'll go grab that pin again, hide it, and validate our wheel race, which again is the end of our axle, and we'll Boolean that out as well. Whoop, hold on, what did I do wrong here? Pin is selected, and then the wheel race, and then we Boolean it. There we go. All right, let's add some polygons to this piece here. Same with this. We'll increase the opacity so you can see it, not see through it. Okay, it automatically smooths. Can you see wireframe triangle count? Sure. Scene vertices are 1.1 million. Size of the scene is 436 megabytes. If I turn on wireframe, there you go. This piece here needs to be hidden. Let's see. We're not going to show that one. We're just going to show all of these. There you go. There's your wireframe. Again, this can be adjusted up or down. Right now we go high wireframe when we're doing cuts and modeling. I have a machine that can handle with the horsepower. It can handle it. By the way, this cap, I forgot to extend the base of this cap down. So that's something that we would do. And then once we go ready for final output, I'll go ahead and decimate the model. So let me turn the wireframe off just to show you a quick way. So I forgot to extend the bottom of our cap down. You're like, oh great, now what do? I got to model a new cap? Heck no. We're just going to go and grab our mask tool, turn on tap, and we'll select just that face there. I'm going to blur it a little bit. Just clean it up a little bit. All right. And then I'll invert the mask by tapping with the mask tool selected. We'll turn on tap off. Just by tapping the screen, I inverted it. I can also just hit the invert button down here. The part that is unmasked is the part that we'll be able to affect. Now I'll turn everything else on so I can see it. We're going to lock our view. And I'll just grab the gizmo over here on the side, and we'll pull it down like this. Okay, go back to mask. We'll clear the mask. I'm going to solo this object so we can see it. And now just for some quick smoothing, I'm going to drop the resolution. And then pump it back up. We'll hit smooth. Smooth our object out, and if you want to apply some manual smoothing, just grab your smooth tool, run along the edge here. Where are we at? We're at 100%. I'm going to knock it up to about 200%. Increase the size of my tool. Now if you find that it's not smoothing easily, just come in here and knock the resolution down. Remesh it to a lower polygon count. It'll smooth out a lot faster. And then once you're doing that, excuse me, if you want a nice flat bottom for printing on your print bed, then what I would do is I'll take my trim tool, use the rectangle, and we will just trim off a little bit of this bottom here. Boom. And then once again, grab our remesh tool to clean up that bottom just a little bit. And now our cap should reach all the way to the top surface of our wheel. And I'll turn X-ray off so you can see everything. And there you go. So that's another way. Get rid of that. I'm going to go select a brush so I don't see the gizmo, but I don't inadvertently trim something off something. So we've got a hole all the way through our axle and our hubcap. And what I would do is I would just shove a toothpick or a piece of filament through there, the same color as the hubcap, of course, and then just trim the ends off flush. If you want to put a little super glue on there, make it permanent. Done and done. So again, I'm going to grab the wheel race, the axle, and the wheel. I'm going to group them together. And we'll just call this axle. Tempted to type it like Axl Rose, but I'm not going to do that. And I'll solo this. And why did... Oh, duh. I was trying to make just the axle. So there's our axle. And again, we would print it flat. So the flat side of the axle would rest on the bed. You will have some supports under here, but it's minimal. Wouldn't worry about it. And then we've got our wheel. Axle and wheel. And the wheel we'd flip on its side. Because it's flat on the back, it'll print nice and clean. Let me turn the grid off because we really don't need it. I'm going to go ahead and validate this wheel. Okay, actually I'm not going to validate it. This part won't show. So again, obviously this will be the show part out here. If you want to get fancy, because your wheel will print flat like this on your bed. So if you want to get fancy with the profile, you know, start adding in some details. Maybe round this a little bit more into a tire shape. Maybe you're a gearhead and you want to do like a Krager rim with various, or a centerline rim. Remember those? With various insets and, you know, transitions. You can do that too. If you want to make your tire real like a thin wall tire or a low profile, that's what I'm trying to say. Sorry, I can't talk much when I'm sculpting because I forget what I'm saying, and then people are like, what was he talking about? I don't know, man. Google it. Alright, so anyway, you get the idea. And then our cap, our hub cap. Actually, that would go with the axle. No, it would print separately. But I want you to see it at the same time that you see the axle. So I'm going to unhide it. There's your hub cap. And then you could do all manner. This will print flat on the print bed in this orientation as well. So if you want to do, you know, various things to the hubcap to dress it up, I mean, you can grab your brush and sculpt it. You know, add little details. If you want to do a filigree on it, you know, make it fancy. That's up to you. What is this? What is what? The application or what we're doing? The application is Nomad Sculpt. What we are doing is creating a wheel and axle with a hubcap setup. We've got versions of the wheel with a hubcap that you put over the end and put a piece of filament through it to lock it on, or we have the slotted hubcap, which is way too far down now. My bad. Should have done a different race for that. Actually, I can just hide the race with a piece that sits on the end of our wheel that allows us to snap it into place. Oh, don't worry about it. We just assumed you meant hello. What is this? It's all good. No worries. No worries. We're here for you. We take you just the way you are. No judgment. Why is that hidden? There we go. Any questions? What time is it? It is 3:30, so I'm going to start wrapping this up pretty soon, but I will pause here for a moment and take questions. Just so you guys know, this is more of a mechanical modeling presentation that goes into application, whether you're making, again, we're going to be, there's another line of things that models that I'll be coming out with. I'm not going to discuss right now because it's a surprise, but I've already revealed that this will be the configuration that I'll be using for our holiday train. So yeah, there's that. But we do, I'm going to go ahead and do a version of this. Remember what I said earlier about versions? We're going to save it. Actually, I'm going to save this. No, I'm going to do a version because we already, yeah. Okay. So I can't tell you about the new line of stuff that we're going to be creating, but this is a this is something we're going to be using on our holiday train for our holiday collection. We just finished up the Harvest collection, and that is live. And now I am starting to work on the holiday collection. And one of them, by request, is a holiday train, which will have, you guessed it, wheels. Now these are more like car or truck wheels, and that's okay. But what if you wanted to do like train wheels? You did that wheel by using Revolve? Yes, we used a lathe to create the wheel. Assuming this is a super convenient and awesome app that's only available on iOS. Cypher, you are in for a surprise of the most pleasant nature. No, it is available on Android. So go look in the Play Store. I think that's where Google sells their Android stuff. And it's called Nomad Sculpt. That is it right there. And that's the icon that you want to look for. Or logo, whatever you want to call it. Nomad. You betcha. Do you have the H2S? No, I have the H2D. And don't ask me off the top of my head what's the difference. I have not been keeping up with how fast Bamboo has been releasing updates to their printer line. I've got 3 X1Cs, got a K2 Plus combo, and I've got the H2D, and then I have a Voron 2.4350 that I hand built. Is it good? It's excellent. It is one of my most favorite printers. What I was going to show you, let me just pop out here and show you real quick. This is the stuff that we typically sculpt. And then this is a print fresh off of my H2D. I printed out a half a dozen of them for family and friends. That's this guy. And this is Hayden the Scarecrow, part of our Harvest collection. This was a lot of fun. We've got a turkey that's coming. His name is Wattle, W-A-T-T-L-E. Bet you can't guess why. And he's part of our Harvest collection as well. I've got a bunch of links in my bio if you want to check out our profiles, our other socials. We have a free Discord you can join, show your work, ask questions, be part of the community. And then, of course, we do have a Patreon and a My Mini Factory. Just fair warning, our Patreon leads to My Mini Factory, so you can be a Patreon supporter. You don't have to pay anything. You can just be there to follow along. But if you want to take part and get access to our models, then My Mini Factory is where Patreon will lead you. Because I am between the H2S and the Snapmaker UI. Highly recommend the H2. Bamboo Lab. They have more experience, and they are the innovators. Everybody is running to catch up with Bamboo. And that's just my opinion for what it's worth. That is what it's worth. If you have never had a Bamboo Lab printer, you won't believe the engineering and the quality of the product. Now, I'm not saying that it never has issues. It does. Once in a while, you'll have issues. But I also know that Bamboo Lab stands behind their product. So that's just as important as the cool factor of the printer itself. All right, so train wheels run on a track, right? So how do we convert this train wheel to a track? Well, it's real simple. We're just going to change the profile of our wheel. And that's a little spoiler alert because I may be making a series of connecting tracks. You bet, MB. Thanks for stopping by. If you didn't give us a follow, please do. And tip your waitress. I'll be here all week. Actually, it's the end of the week. Tip your waitress anyway. They work hard. And just with a few extra points on our profile, we've now turned this into, from a rubber tire to a train wheel that will sit very nicely on potential train tracks that we may or may not be making. Oh, man. Isn't this stuff fun? Seriously, get yourself a copy of Nomad. You guys can do this. You can make this stuff. And again, the cool thing is you won't have any strength issues with this wheel. And the reason is because, how did I lose wheel? Oh, I think I turned it sideways, didn't I? Yep, that's why. The cool thing about this wheel is because it's going to be printed on your print bed, you know, with this bottom side here attached to the bed, your layer lines will go this way. Okay, it's going to make for a really strong wheel. So yeah. And it'll still sit just fine even if you don't put it on tracks. So if I don't get, you know, if I wind up not getting a track made in time, but how difficult could it be to make tracks, right? Well, I don't know. I'll bet you that we could make one real fast, couldn't we? I'm going to zoom out just a little bit here. I'm going to grab my tube tool, and I'm going to set it to path, and I'm going to go, you know what? Let's make a track. Just like that. And there you go. I'm just kidding. That's just the beginning of the track. I'm going to go ahead and center up my pivot point. I'm going to move this over here underneath the wheel. And now, one of the things that you can do in Nomad is you can change the profile. Well, a train track is nothing more than a piece of metal that matches the shape that's been extruded to match the shape of the wheel. So I'm going to come over here and turn on profile. We instantly get a square. That's the default for the profile. I'm not sure why they didn't make it a circle or a curve, but they didn't. That's all right because we can convert it. All right, so that's looking a little more track-like. I'm going to zoom in and lock that down. And basically what we're going to do now is we're just going to play around with this profile. I'm going to zoom. I can go full screen if I want to work on this profile. The only downside is I can't see the results in my viewport. So as much as possible, I try to work out here. As close as possible, I want to match the curve of that wheel. At the same time, widen the base out, and then put a couple of indents here. And the reason is because it's stronger at the base because it's wider, and then this is also going to attach to train tracks, or to the ties that go in between. The rails. Oop. Now this is where I might actually zoom in to get a little closer to my profile, so I can clean it up. I'm going to turn snap off in the grid. Alright, let's see what we got. Alright, I'm going to move this down and over just a little bit. And now because I zoomed out and then zoomed back in, whoops, I should be able to just adjust points here to get the final shape that I want. I was trying to make it more of a slant going down, but there's really no reason to do that. I'm going to hit focus to bring everything back, because rails are pretty much symmetrical. All right, that's close enough. Let's jump out here and see what we got. You betcha, Cypher. I am glad that we're part of the solution. All right, so we've got our rail. Okay. One thing I'm definitely going to increase the topology. And I don't need so much to increase it on the end caps, so I'm just going to increase the Y division. And I think I might increase the X just a little bit. Alright, so that'll make a nice smooth rail. In between the rails, obviously, we would want railroad ties. That's easy enough. I'm just going to throw in a couple of... I'm going to grab a box here. And we're going to scale it this way. And then we'll definitely scale it down this way. What I want to do, though, is I don't want a lot of supports under my railroad ties, so I would want to bring those right down to the bottom of my rail, like that. And then let's go ahead and extend this out here. I don't need snap-on. And let's increase the divisions. Okay, so that works great for a railroad tie. Obviously, we'd have another axle, wheel over here, and another tie on the other side. I'm not going to worry about doing that right now. And we'll call this tie, because that's what they're called. And now we're going to apply a repeater to it, or what's called an array. All right, and I don't want it to go down the z-axis, like so. And I don't know, actually, I think I should be able to move. Because if not, we'll use a path array. Or a curve repeater. Yeah, see, for some reason I thought that we could adjust. Oh, there we go. That's how we set the distance. All right, let me line up my pivot point. I'm going to start it here, and then I'm going to stretch it over this distance, and then count how many ties go in between. That's probably about right there. Hello. Hey, do you design for a fee? I need some parts design I can print and test. Viral Reels. Shoot me a DM. Let's talk about it in private. But yes, I am available for contract designing. All right, so there are the railroad ties along with our track. Now that's nice for straight pieces. If we wanted to do a version of the track, so here's what I'm going to do. Let's grab we've got our tiles, and we've got I'm going to call that rail because that's what it is. And I'm going to group those up together. And we'll call this straight track. Tark? No, track. What time is it? All right, we still got a little bit of time. So this is great. This is how you set up a straight track. And that's, again, kind of a little bit of a spoiler. Part of what we're going to be doing for our holiday collection. I've seen people make trains, but not a lot of people make tracks that you can put the trains on. And what good is a train if you don't have a track, right? So, we've got our straight track, but as you know, not all tracks are straight. So we're going to take this track and we're going to clone it. Clone the group, and we're going to call this curve track. Now, there's some things to take into account when you develop, a track that your car can go around. We're going to need to put our axles on possibly on slight pivots. Definitely make the curves big enough so the train can make it around the curve without falling off. But, I'm moving the group, right? Curve track. Oh, that's funny. It duplicated the group, but not the entire thing because I didn't have everything selected. There we go. Now we clone, and it'll clone everything, and not just the group. Curve. Can't type today. Curve track. Okay. So there's our straight track. Here's our curve track. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the straight track as kind of a template. So I'm going to move my curve track out of here. Okay. So we've got our curve track. Let's see. Somebody's spamming me on Kick. Hey, friend, I saw your channel. Noticed you're posting great content. Yeah. All right. I'll look you up. Blessing 14752. Okay. So the array repeater that we've got isn't going to work here because that only works in straight lines. So now we're going to use a repeater that is a curved repeater. I don't know why I put it on the slotted hubcaps. Let's undo that. Tie, apply, curve repeater. There we go. Now this takes a little manipulating to get it into position. Actually, I might turn snap on for this. So let's get it on the horizontal, and then we got to rotate our tie into place. And actually, I'm going to turn snap on for that as well, so we constrain it to 90 degrees. And then we're going to move it just like that. Okay. I'm going to move, whoop, let me go back to my curve. Now this, you can edit simply by pulling the end of the repeater. And I was hoping we could do that with the array, but we can't. It's okay. There's more than one way to get something done. And then we increase the count of ties in between. So we get roughly the same amount of ties we had on the other one. Now, let's go to our rail first. We kept this as an editable object. We haven't validated it yet. So what we can do now is we can pull a curve on this. I know, doesn't look like much of a curve, does it? That's okay. Because when we pull this, now it does become a curve. Same thing here. I'm going to grab the curve repeater, and we're going to pull this down here. And put a curve here in the center, or roughly center. And just like when you've watched me do feathers, you may need to add additional points to control your curve and get it to go exactly the way you want. But at the end of the day, when you do, you now have a curved piece of track. And again, I would create all of this. We'll put another rail out here. Obviously, I'll have an axle that I use to measure things to make sure that the curve is correct. And once it's all set, then we'll be good to go. I think we need a couple more ties in between here. Probably right about there. Again, up to the artist's discretion. And now, using Nomad, we've created our axle, train axle. We've created a straight piece of track and a curved piece of track. And all that's left now would be to devise a way to connect the pieces of tracks. And I'm not sure right out of the gate how I would do that, except probably just cut a like a puzzle piece into this. Again, these are going to print straight up. Whoop, sorry, I mean hit my camera here. These are going to print straight up from the bed. Looks like I need to bring my ties down too. So it really comes down to just how I want to do it overhead. So I would probably, and I'd have to validate this, which I'm going to go ahead and do it because this is just all for test anyway. Oops, let's undo that. And I want to unsolo. And I'm going to pull this out just a smidge more. Let's see. I sent him a message, but tried sending full details. Won't let me send. Yeah, I'll accept your after this stream. I'll go ahead and respond to your message. Okay, so we validate this. This is already validated. Again, I'm just kind of running rough here. I'm going to create a key that will cut out one side and live in the other side, and that's real simple. What shape do I want to use to do that? Ah, gosh. Let's see. Let me think. Let's just do a tube. We'll just do a tube. So I've got my path set here. I'll go top to bottom. We'll trim it as needed. All right. I'm going to increase the diameter. All right. Let's up our topology, like so. Oop. I want to focus on that piece. And then I think we'll stretch it this way a little bit. Maybe compress it this way a little bit. And you know what? Let's do it this way. I'm going to go ahead and compress this. We'll add another shape, which will be our cylinder. And again, I'm trying to keep this basic and use primitives. So everybody's like, oh yeah, I get it. And then at the same time, it's like, I could do that. Because that's ultimately what we're about here. We're trying to promote you into being able to do this stuff too, and feel confident and secure enough that you can do so. All right, so I'm going to put a circle here, and the reason I'm putting a circle here is I want to create kind of a nub that goes out, so when you slide it in over here, the track doesn't pull apart. Real simple explanation. Probably not the right technical explanation, but all right, let's go up here. I'm going to pull it down here. We're going to stretch it. Don't worry about, oh gosh, let's turn snap off. Don't need it on the side. There we go. Don't worry about the top and bottom. We're going to trim them anyway. All right. And probably just a little bigger. Mr. and Mrs. Bigger had a baby. Which one was the biggest? Yes, that's a joke. I'll give you a minute to respond. Mr. and Mrs. Bigger had a baby. Who's the biggest? All right, let's clone this while you're thinking of the answer. The baby. He was a little bigger. I know. Crazy, huh? All right, I'm going to select all three of these items. And then we will mesh them together. This is how we weld things together. I almost said in TikTok, and that wouldn't be accurate. In Nomad. All right, I'm going to turn on X-ray so I can see the top and bottom of my rail. I'm going to trim the top. And we're going to trim the bottom. Again, we're running rough and fast here because I'm almost out of time and we're just showing you concepts anyway. All right, let's smooth it a little bit. Okay. Turn X-ray off. Now we're going to move this to the center, like so. All right, and I'm going to need two of these. I'm going to need, this is going to be the track connector. Track connector. And then this track over here, the curved track, we're going to move it back into position. Like so. And again, I know it's not exactly lined up, but it doesn't have to be because we're just communicating a concept here. All right, so this is our connector. I'm going to need two of these. I need one for the actual connector that lives in this side of the track. And then I need another one that we're going to blow up a little bit and make it a Boolean. So we're just going to call it Boolean. All right, I'm going to set everything to X-ray and we'll turn the opacity of our connector down so we can see through it. Come over here to our operations and we'll inflate it. About that much. Doesn't have to be a lot. Okay, and it'll have stability because there'll be one on each side, so I'm not worried about, guarding and checking tolerances and all of that. Okay, so there's our Boolean. I'm going to use the Boolean to cut out which part of the track. Where's the track? There's the track. Here's the Boolean. So I'm going to hide it. We'll select the rail and we'll hit Boolean. Okay, so there you go. And then, simple enough, we'll take the other track connector, which belongs down here. Actually, no, I'm sorry, it goes up here. And then we'll connect that to the rail. And we would smooth it out and clean it up and all that. But that is basically, after smoothing and everything, that is basically how your tracks would connect. There you go. Any questions? Because we are rapidly approaching I'm not sure why, but our music just cut out on us. And I'm not too worried about it. Anyway, so there we go. We got our axle, we've got our wheel, we've got our track segments, curved and straight. And like I said, there'll be a lot of testing. Well, not a lot. I'm pretty confident in my ability to get this right the first time. But then there will be texturing. We'll texture the railroad ties. Obviously, we'll shift over to paint. And, like I said, now it just comes down again to artistic interpretation. Let's pin that open. No, let's shut it. There we go. And there is a cap in there somewhere, or a race. There it is. And we'll be showing you how to do the texture on the railroad ties. If you want to paint, or I'm sorry, if you want to print your rails in like a silver silk, that'll give them a little bit of shine. But there you go. So, oh, we didn't paint the pin. Need to sample this color and then paint it. There we go. Gotta paint the pin, man. Actually, the pin wouldn't even exist, because that would be something that you would just use a segment of filament in whatever color you printed this stuff here. So yeah, there's that. All right. Well, folks, that is going to pretty much do it for me. It is 3 minutes to 4, so we are right on target. I got some errands to run, and as I said earlier, I've got dinner with my family. We have links on our bio, all kinds of links, and I was going to show you the links, but you know what? You know how to find them in our bio, right underneath our profile picture. You click on the link, it opens up a link tree. There's all kinds of links in there. We've got more links we're going to be adding. My Mini Factory, Patreon, YouTube, all of our socials. We do have a Discord server. The Discord server is free. There is a free portion. There is a paid portion, but that is for people that become My Mini Factory supporters. And there's perks that go along with that, which I'm not going to get into right now because I do have to get going. But yes, I will respond viral reels, and we can have a conversation beyond that. So today's Friday, so everybody have a great weekend. I doubt that I'll be on this weekend. If I am, it'll be a surprise to both of us. The day that I'll most likely be here might be tomorrow. I've got some appointments downtown in the great city of Chicago on Monday, so I won't be here Monday. I might no, I've got another appointment on Tuesday. So Monday, Tuesday. Tuesday's usually my streaming day, but I won't be here Tuesday either. I might be here Wednesday morning, and then I've got a yeah. So Wednesday and maybe Thursday. Although I'm leaving for San Antonio late next week, so I might not. I might not be on Thursday either, but definitely, I think definitely we can circle back Wednesday. So, again, everybody have a great day. It's been a pleasure, and have a great weekend. And I look forward to seeing you all next time.